Like, comment, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. All right, y'all. So this is another court case that I have been following closely. This is Bryan Christopher Kohberger. Mr. Kohberger was a Ph.D. criminology student at Washington State University. He has been accused of unaliving 4 college students at the University of Idaho. I first heard about him back in early December of 2022 when the police actually swarmed his parents' home and arrested him, charging him with brutally unaliving 3 women and 1 man, all students at the University of Idaho. He is currently in custody and being held without bond at Letha, Moscow, Idaho County Jail. The police have determined that the crime occurred on November 13th, 2022. There was a period after the unalivings occurred where there was just no information, no updates. And then approximately 6 weeks later, the police announced that they had apprehended and arrested Bryan C. Kohberger. Now, this case not only interests me because of the age of the victims as well as the defendant. Bryan Kohberger is 29 years old, so he's relatively young, but he's very knowledgeable of the law. So I was not surprised when during his court appearance, his first court appearance, he definitely appears to know his way around a courtroom.
We're on the record in the 2nd Judicial District, Latah County. This is the Magistrate's Division of District Court. This is State of Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohberger, cause number CR 29222805. Mr. Kohberger is present in court. He is in custody. He is appearing with his attorney, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, on behalf of the state. This is the time set in the matter for initial appearance. Mr. Kohberger, I am going to advise you of the rights that you have in this case. I am going to go over the criminal complaint with you, and then we're going to discuss setting the matter for further hearing. You have the following rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to the presumption of innocence. That means the state bears the burden to prove that you are guilty of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is a probable cause hearing. At that hearing, the state must establish that more likely than not, these felony offenses were committed and you were the one that committed the felony offenses. You have a right to have that hearing within 14 days if you remain in custody. If you are bound over at that preliminary hearing to district court, if the court finds probable cause, you would be bound over to district court. And at that time, you can enter a plea of not guilty, and you can have a jury trial set within 6 months of your appearance in district court. At both your preliminary hearing and your jury trial, you have the right to confront and question any evidence or witnesses called against you. Call witnesses on your own behalf and compel witnesses to be present and testify at the state's expense. You have the right to be represented by a lawyer. If you cannot afford one, one could be appointed to represent you based upon your financial need. You also have the right to appeal any conviction in your case. Do you understand these rights?
Yes.
I am now going to go over the criminal complaint with you. Count 1 of the...
I ain't even finna hold y'all, but do y'all see how he looks? He just looks unmoved, unbothered, answering in one-word answers. But guess what? That doesn't surprise me. Because of his education, at the time of his arrest, he was a criminology student at Washington State University. Therefore, he knows a lot about the legal system and the law. So he definitely knows how to play his part as a defendant. So we're not going to see a whole bunch of antics in this trial. What we'll more likely see is very cunning strategies coming out of the defense because the defendant is able to help his lawyer, who, by the way, spoiler alert, is a public defender.
Complaint with you. Count 1 of the criminal complaint charges you with the felony offense of burglary. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder, in violation of Idaho Code 18-1401 and 1403. The maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is not less than 1 year in prison, no more than 10 years in prison, and or a $50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 2 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. The maximum penalty for this offense, if you were to plead guilty or be found guilty, is death or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 3 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Goncalves, a human being, by stabbing Kaylee Goncalves, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, 4004. Again, the maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is death and or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 4 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing Xana Kernodle, from which she died, in violation of Idaho Code 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. Again, the maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is up to death and or imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
Count 5 alleges that you committed the felony offense of murder in the first degree. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing Ethan Chapin, from which he died, in violation of Idaho Codes 18-4001, 4002, 4003, and 4004. And again, the maximum penalty for this offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is up to death and imprisonment for life. Do you understand?
Yes.
And Mr. Kohberger, would you like to represent yourself, hire a lawyer, or see if you qualify for court-appointed counsel?
I have court-appointed counsel.
Court has reviewed your application for attorney at public expense. I do find that you are indigent and do qualify for court-appointed counsel. I will appoint Ms. Taylor to represent you in this case. Ms. Taylor, have you had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Kohberger about speedy preliminary hearing and setting this matter?
Your Honor, I have. We would ask the court to set the status hearing in a week or two to make a final determination.
Okay. And Mr. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, are you in agreement with that?
That's fine with the state, Your Honor.
I will go ahead and set this matter for a status hearing then on the calendar on January 12th at 10 o'clock a.m. We will make sure notice is sent, and then Ms. Taylor, do you wish to argue bail at this time?
Your Honor, I would like to ask the court to consider setting a bond. Mr. Kohberger right now is on a no bond hold, but it's a limited request as I don't have enough information. We are new to the case. We haven't reviewed very much in the way of information about the case, and we have just begun our own work on the case. But we would want the court to know that Mr. Kohberger has a good family that stands behind him.
And Mr. Thompson.
The state's position is that Mr. Kohberger is not entitled to bond in this case for charges, as is noted on the arrest warrant itself. Idaho Code 19-816, 19-2903 both specify that given the potential penalties in this case, there's no direct bail. The defendant was arrested 3,000 miles away across the country, where his family is. We do ask that he remain in custody. No bail.
At this point in time, pursuant to Idaho Criminal 46B and Idaho Code 19-816 and 2903, I am going to leave the bail set of this case as no bail at this point in time until I have additional and further information at a later date and time. So with that, then Mr. Kohberger, you will be remanded in custody and remain in custody on the no bail pending further proceedings in this matter. Is there anything further in the case then for today, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Your Honor. The state is asking for no contact orders for various family members of the deceased and also for surviving roommates. I've spoken briefly with Ms. Taylor. She indicated there's no objection.
And Ms. Taylor, is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
So I will go ahead and issue those no contact orders. So I do have a no contact order then for the named individual of Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funk, as well as the family members and Mr. Chapin. The family members are Ms. Kernodle, excuse me, yes, Mr. and Ms. Laramie, Mr. Mogen, Ms. Cheeley, and then a number of members of the Goncalves family. Those specific names will certainly be provided to you, Mr. Kohberger, by way of being provided notice of these documents. You'll get a copy of these no contact orders. What you do need to be advised of, and what will be in this no contact order, is you are prohibited from having any contact with them whatsoever. You cannot contact them through third person in writing or by any electronic means. You cannot Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, use the phone to communicate with them, or otherwise any form of communication in direct or indirectly with them. You cannot engage in any conduct that would harass, stalk, threaten, use, attempt to use, or threaten to use any physical force or violence upon them, or place them in reasonable fear of bodily injury. You cannot go within or knowingly remain within 300 feet of their person or their home, workplace, or any other place where they might be. There are no exceptions to these orders, and if you do violate these orders, it is a new misdemeanor offense. It is punishable by up to a year in jail and or a $1,000 fine or both. At this point in time, due to being in the magistrate's division here, at this juncture, I am going to issue the no contact orders for a period of 2 years, and then if it needs to be modified or changed by additional judge, it can be done so at that time. Is there anything further, Mr. Thompson?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further, Ms. Taylor?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned.
So his first appearance was held, as you saw, on January 5th, 2024. And he presented exactly how I would have imagined him, sitting there stoic, responding in one-word answers. I mean, he's very familiar with the law. He knows anything he says can and will be used against him. So this should be very interesting. This is what really, really interests me in this case, guys. So I am here to give you some answers as to who Bryan C. Kohberger is. I'm going to rewind the clock 4 years. 4 years ago, Kohberger had a part-time job as a security officer with the Pleasant Valley School District. While on duty in his security guard capacity, he was alerted that one of his coworkers, a hall monitor, an elderly woman, was having trouble breathing and also lost consciousness. He sprung into action. Kohberger grabbed the school's defibrillator machine. He and a few other colleagues were able to attend to their coworker, so much so that disaster was averted. But the incident made the local paper in Pennsylvania, where Kohberger grew up with his parents, Michael and Marianne, and two sisters, Amanda and Melissa. I would also like to make note that most of Kohberger's college courses have focused on criminality and the mind. I'll give you a little bit more about the family dynamic by sharing that his mother worked as a paraprofessional at Pleasant Valley School District, and by all accounts, she was loved by all of her students. One person in particular reported that she was the type of woman to tell her students that they can certainly feel free to call her after losing a parent or family member or just to talk. His sisters, both older than Kohberger, studied psychology at East Coast schools before finding work in the field. Melissa is a therapist in New Jersey, while Amanda is a counselor in Pennsylvania. The family lived for years in Effort, an unincorporated community in Monroe County with a population of under 2,500, just minutes from Pleasant Valley School District, where the children also graduated from high school. Kohberger's father, Michael Kohberger, worked as a maintenance worker for a number of years, and they lived in a very quiet community 90 miles north of Philadelphia, where Bryan Kohberger was known to cut the neighbors' lawns. In high school, Bryan Kohberger was overweight and bullied. Then he lost 100 pounds in his senior year, and more than just his appearance changed, according to friends. After the weight loss, a lot of people noticed a definite change in Bryan Kohberger. He became the bully. A friend of his, in an interview with 48 Hours, explained that after the weight loss, Bryan would actually bully her and also harass and bully her siblings. putting them in chokeholds. And she also indicated that whenever Bryan Kohberger would get upset, he would start gaslighting people and get physically aggressive. A young man by the name of Thomas told the Daily Beast that growing up around Kohberger liked to point out his flaws and insecurities, and he would do so all the time. He said he would go after his intelligence, and he would basically insinuate that he was kind of slow. Another associate of Kohberger's, Nick McLaughlin, 26, who attended classes at both Pleasant Valley High School and Monroe Counts Vocational School with Kohberger, told the Daily Beast that the suspect had an interest in becoming a police officer and took criminal justice courses. According to one of Kohberger's former teachers, he was passionate about criminal justice, and he was just a regular 12th grader, had a few friends, was a good student, she said. His teacher also thought that he would become a police officer or a correctional officer. She told the Daily Beast that he liked to watch movies about police and then come in the next day and ask her if she'd seen it. It was not just a hobby to him. His teacher recalls him always asking questions related to law enforcement. The changes in his behavior could have also been attributed to his drug abuse. According to another friend, Bree, during an interview with 48 Hours, she claimed that he had started using heroin. She said that people were not his strong suit. According to Bree, she could see him becoming more and more destructive. He really started to stay secluded. In an article published in February by the Idaho Statesman, high school friends and acquaintances of Bryan Kohberger addressed the previous reports that he was indeed bullied because of his weight. They told the newspaper that Bryan Kohberger found in marijuana a way to cope with the consistent targeting that he suffered as a teenager before escalating to heroin. After high school, it is reported by an associate, Casey, that he entered into a rehab. Shortly after, he earned his Associates of Arts degree in psychology from Northampton Community College in 2018. By all appearances, it seemed that Kohberger was definitely doing much better. He continued his studies at DeSales University in Center Valley, Pennsylvania, where he graduated in 2020 with a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in criminal justice in 2022. Teachers and classmates have described him as bright, focused, and nearly obsessive about criminology. One of his former professors, Michelle Boger at DeSales, described him as a great writer and a brilliant student. She told the Daily Mail that in her 10 years of teaching, she's only recommended 2 students to the Ph.D. program, and he was one of them. She also said that he was one of her best students ever, and everyone is in shock over this. After Kohberger's graduation from DeSales, he left Pennsylvania and headed on to pursue his Ph.D. at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington, which is located just across the state border from the University of Idaho in Moscow. He was a teaching assistant at the university in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology. According to one of his fellow grad students, he sort of creeped people out. B.K. Norton told the New York Times that he was quiet and had an intense demeanor. She also alleged that he made comments about the LGBTQ community that made others uncomfortable. She said that he would stare a lot and he didn't talk much, but when he did, it was very intelligent, almost like he needed everyone to know that he was smart. Bryan Kohberger at one point also tried to obtain an internship within the Pullman Police Department. Kohberger wrote in his essay that he had an interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. He was committed, it seems, to thoroughly exploring the inner workings of the criminal mind, posting a survey to Reddit that asked for participants to provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime. Kohberger appeared to be very detailed in his efforts to understand the inner workings of the criminal mind, and some reported that he actually applied that same attitude to his diet. A former aunt, I'm guessing she was married to maybe his uncle, spoke with the New York Post and described Kohberger's food regimen as being very, very weird and went above and beyond being vegan. She said that he would require his relatives to buy new pots and pans because he did not want to eat from any pots and pans that had ever had meat cooked in them. This aunt also mentioned that he seemed to be very OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. There were also allegations of sexism and a disciplinary action at Washington State University. The 29-year-old began working as a teaching assistant in the criminology department in August as a part of his graduate program. But within a month, he was already under investigation by the university because of behavioral problems and a sexist attitude towards women, according to News Nation. His attitude towards women was noted as a key concern, with the criminal justice student allegedly being rude to women, grading the women that he taught differently than the men, and having a sexist attitude toward females he interacted with at the school. He also allegedly got into multiple altercations with Professor John Snyder. The first altercation reportedly took place on September 23rd, and he was called in to meet the professor to discuss his behavior on October 3rd. But by all accounts, that conversation only led to his behavior escalating, with reports of him becoming increasingly feisty and belligerent and getting into arguments with professors leading up to the unalivings that occurred on November 13th. On October 21st, Professor Snyder emailed Bryan Kohberger telling him he had failed to meet the expectations he had outlined in their previous discussion. On November 2nd, 11 days before the unalivings, Kohberger reportedly met with the professor to discuss an improvement plan for his behavior. And even after the brutal slayings of the 4 college students, the university continued to make note of his concerning behavior. Bryan Kohberger attended a meeting with the professor about the improvement plan on December 7th, and this is before he got into yet another altercation with him 2 days later. Professor John Snyder condemned his behavior. Writing to Bryan Kohberger, he said that it was clear and apparent that Kohberger had not made progress regarding his professionalism. On December 19th, just over 1 month from the unaliving of the 4 students, Bryan Kohberger was ultimately fired from his Washington State University teaching post. This was reported by News Nation. Following the gruesome unalivings, classmates said that Kohberger continued attending classes, but seemed more upbeat and willing to carry on a conversation. Mid-December of 2022, Kohberger then drove across country with his father in his white Hyundai Elantra, getting stopped twice in Indiana before returning to his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He was arrested there on December 30th, 2022, and extradited to Moscow to face charges. Since his indictment, his lawyers have maintained that he is an innocent man and that Bryan Kohberger would like his day in court so that he may clear his name. His family released a statement expressing their condolences to the victims' families and urging for a presumption of innocence as it relates to their son. Now, I think I've given you guys a fairly good introduction to who Bryan Kohberger is. In the case of Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohberger, they have DNA evidence, video surveillance, as well as cell phone data. The DNA evidence is what I'm intrigued with the most as it relates to this case. His attorneys have asserted that he is an innocent man, but DNA technology is supposed to be the end-all be-all. So this will be, I think, a groundbreaking case, regardless of which way the verdict ends up. Guys, I do intend on attending the trial of Bryan C. Kohberger in Idaho. I will be boots on the ground, giving you guys updates as they become available. Now, I want to go ahead and insert this clip. It's from ABC News, and they've put together a timeline of events.
On November 13, 2022, these 4 university students were discovered stabbed in their home in Moscow, Idaho. Local police described the case as very complex, and it took more than 6 weeks for a suspect to be arrested. We pieced together information from a case affidavit released by authorities, verified publicly available evidence, and pulled in ABC News reporting to create a visual timeline outlining significant events in this case. It's around 9 p.m. local time on Saturday, November 12th in Moscow, Idaho. According to an affidavit released by authorities, Xana Kernodle and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin are seen hanging out at the Sigma Chi house. It's about a 5-minute walk from their off-campus house on King Road. Xana's roommates Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogen are at the Corner Club. It's a historic sports bar in town. They stay at the bar for about 3 hours, according to an affidavit released by authorities. And around 1:30 a.m., Kaylee and Maddie leave the corner bar. The next available images we have of them are in this surveillance footage obtained by ABC News. They're heading towards a local food truck, which is about a 6-minute walk from the bar. Police say this man with them is not a suspect. This is the grub truck. They have been streaming live on Twitch since about 10 p.m. And around 1:41 a.m., we see
That is the beauty of social media. The food truck was streaming live on Twitch from 10 p.m. up until the time, probably even beyond the time that the two ladies stepped up to place their order. And luckily, in this day and age, the police were able to gather that piece of surveillance footage from the Twitch stream. So, yeah, I'm happy that we live in a world where things are definitely being recorded when you least expect it.
Live on Twitch since about 10 p.m. And around 1:41 a.m., we see all three of them walk into frame. Maddie and Kaylee order food.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thanks. I think I would like the carbonara.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
How many more do you need? That's the second one? Awesome.
Don's mom.
then you said
$10 for
Perfect. Cool. Thank you.
you. $47. Thank you very much.
They wait around for about 10 minutes. Around 1:51 a.m., they grab food from the truck window and walk out of frame. Police confirm that at this point they get picked up by a car service, and about 6 minutes later, they arrive at home on King Road. According to an affidavit, Ethan and Xana are already in the house along with 2 other roommates. 2:47 a.m. According to police, a phone belonging to the suspect, Bryan Kohberger, stops connecting to the cell network in nearby Pullman, Washington. This is where he lives and studies criminology as a Ph.D. student at Washington State University. 2:53 a.m. Authorities say a white sedan consistent with a vehicle registered to Kohberger is seen traveling towards the highway that connects Pullman and Moscow. It's only about a 10-mile drive between the two cities. At 3:29 a.m., surveillance footage obtained by police from the King Road neighborhood captures a white sedan making an initial drive by the victim's house. Authorities say this car will make another 2 passes in the next 30 minutes. It's 4 a.m. According to the affidavit, Xana receives a DoorDash delivery, and a source tells ABC News that the delivery is contactless and the order is left at the front door. A surviving roommate would later tell authorities that around this time, 4 a.m., she wakes up to what sounds like Kaylee playing with her dog in the room on the 3rd floor. She also reports hearing someone say, "There's someone here." 4:04 a.m., authorities say the white sedan is seen driving into the neighborhood a 4th time. 4:12 a.m., according to phone records obtained by police, Xana is awake and using TikTok. The affidavit states that the same surviving roommate says she hears what sounds like crying coming from Xana's room. She opens her door a second time and says she hears a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." At 4:17 a.m., this security camera on a neighbor's home picks up distorted audio of what sounds like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times. This camera is less than 50 feet from Xana's bedroom. The affidavit states their surviving roommate then opens her door a 3rd time. She sees a masked man walking past her towards the sliding glass door in the kitchen. In frozen shock, she locks her door. 4:20 a.m., police say the white sedan is seen leaving the neighborhood at a high rate speed. 5:25 a.m., authorities say that same vehicle is seen on 5 cameras back in the Pullman area, near where the suspect lives. And then, between 9:12 and 9:21 a.m., police say data collected shows the suspect's phone appearing near the scene of the murders. About 8 hours after the killings, a 911 call reports an unconscious person at the scene of the crime. Shortly after, Moscow police discover the bodies of 4 students.
The facts of the case that we know right now.
November 16th, police reveal the 4 victims were stabbed to death.
The 4 were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time.
We are eternally grateful that we spent so much time with him.
This is Ethan's mom on November 30th at a vigil honoring her son and the 3 other victims.
That's the most important message that we have for you and your families, is to make sure that you spend as much time as possible with those people, because time is precious and it's something you can't get back.
We're looking for a 2011 to a 2013 Hyundai Elantra.
December 7th, no suspects have been publicly identified, and Moscow police appeal to the public for help.
Any assistance you can give us, anybody that owns one, anybody that knows of someone who owns one or may have been driving one, if you could get a hold of us through our tip line or call us directly, we'd appreciate that.
December 15th, Kohberger and his father are driving eastbound on I-70 when they get pulled over by a Hancock County Sheriff's deputy.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. You were right up on the back end of that van. So you're coming from Washington State University? Yeah. And you're going where? Oh.
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we're slightly punched because we're driving for hours.
Hours, days.
Hours.
They're driving across the country to their family home in Pennsylvania.
Okay. But do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay?
10 minutes later, they are pulled over again, but this time by Indiana State Police. Both departments would later say they had no identifying information on the suspect at the time of these stops or the alleged vehicle involved. The Indiana State Police added in another statement that its agency wasn't directed by the FBI to make the traffic stop. 15 days later, Kohberger is arrested in Pennsylvania. The FBI identified the suspect by linking DNA evidence from the crime scene to a public genealogy database. January 3rd, he is extradited.
Yes, you heard that correctly. The FBI utilized a public genealogy database to identify and link Bryan Christopher Kohberger to this quadruple unaliving. That is fascinating to me because they linked him through his family tree. From what I understand, when Bryan Kohberger arrived home in Pennsylvania, the FBI had already identified him as a person of interest. And at that time, they had him under surveillance. And they saw Kohberger putting his trash from his home into the neighbor's trash can. And apparently that is how they obtained the DNA sample that they needed to link Bryan C. Kohberger to the crime.
Public genealogy database. January 3rd, he is extradited back to Idaho where he is charged with felony burglary and 4 counts of first-degree murder. In a statement, his extradition lawyer in Pennsylvania said his client was eager to be exonerated. The suspect remains in custody, awaiting his next court appearance in June.
Kohberger's defense team has made 2 attempts to get the indictment against him dismissed. In one, they argued that the grand jury was given inaccurate instructions, that they used the wrong standard of proof. In the other, they argued that the prosecutors withheld evidence that might aid Bryan Kohberger in defending himself and biased the grand jury. The judge denied both requests mid-December. Just before Christmas, Kohberger's team asked the judge to reconsider that decision. That request is sealed to the public, but once it is unsealed, I will be sure to share the details of it with you guys. After the judge denied their request to dismiss the indictment against their client, Kohberger's public defenders decided to take the issue up in the Idaho Supreme Court, and on Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, the Idaho Supreme Court denied the pretrial appeal from attorneys representing Bryan Kohberger. In the one-page ruling issued by the Supreme Court Tuesday afternoon, the justices offered no legal rationale for their denial of the motion to appeal from Kohberger's attorneys. The document was signed by the clerk of the Idaho Supreme Court. Now, with all of the delays that have occurred with this case, the trial for Bryan Kohberger may not happen until 2025. However, I will continue to follow the case and keep you guys updated. Guys, please be sure to drop me a comment, smash the heck out of that like button, and share. And all of my carbonation folks, welcome to the introduction of Bryan C. Kohberger, the man who is charged with burglary and 4 counts of unaliving 4 young, vibrant college students in Moscow, Idaho.